What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Kick-Ass Podcast. We are here today to take a look at WWE Clash at the Castle, take a look at the match card itself, make some predictions, see if we're going to have a new heavyweight champion coming out of it, or new champions, plural, coming out of it. Um, and take a look at the road leading to SummerSlam, which is just so crazy that we're already gearing towards SummerSlam, like it's already that time of the year, summertime, all that good stuff. Um, so it's just in thinking about in a lot of ways it feels like WrestleMania just happened, and then thinking about this is June, right? I can't even think right now. It's late, guys. Full disclosure, I'm recording very late today after I hit my full time today and then my part time. I'm just a little maybe possibly leaning towards delirious. It's been a long week. But I miss talking about wrestling, and especially with kind of getting more consistent and getting back into it, I kind of want to stay on track, right? And continue to pump out as much content as I can, right? And like I've said many times, this is, if nothing else, just like a little venting session or a little just verbal diaries for myself, right? It's fun to go back and look on prediction shows or just recap shows or just shows in general from a few years back, like what was the world like in this time last year, this time 2 years ago. So in that in general, right? For that matter. But with that being said, like I say, as always, thank you guys so much for checking out the show. If you're watching on YouTube again, or listening on Apple, Spotify, whatever, feel free to follow me on Twitter at ASHMANNS, and you can follow the show's Twitter page at Kickash Podcast _ leave comments anywhere, your feedback, your predictions, and just the stories going into Clash at the Castle, and then what do you think the stories coming out of it will be? I think for me personally, like I was referencing the main event, assumed main event, Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre. I think that's very difficult for me to predict, personally. So that's fun. You know what I mean? I think that's what we all love about wrestling is when it's unpredictable, right? But in a fun way. And they just have so many different routes they can go, and I think that's the main overall picture, and especially with Triple H obviously being in charge for a little bit of time now. He is a long-term booking kind of guy, right? Like it may not seem that way, but he is a story guy, and he does stuff for purpose, even if it doesn't really seem that way, and even if the purpose is just to do it, right? Sometimes it's okay when it comes to that, but for at least the titles in the grand scheme, and we're not going to nitpick and go through each one individually right now, but at least the championships and the champions themselves are getting airtime. They're at least getting some type of attention, which is a big improvement, and just stories, right? So card, and take a look at it here because I think, like I said, this pay-per-view, or PLE rather. Don't I've seen on Twitter X that if you call WWE's important shows pay-per-views, or if you call AEW's important shows PLEs, that it can incite some mass feedback. So gotta be cautious, guys. Gotta be cautious. But getting back into the most important part, right? The card itself, and going over some predictions. Again, as we have mentioned, right? And it's pretty obvious at this point. They will be traveling to Glasgow, I almost said Ireland, Scotland on Saturday for the pay-per-view, which is very fun. I again love the Saturday shows. I believe it probably starts at 1 our time on the East Coast here in the old US. Excuse me, guys, had to get a quick old swig of the, as always, Canada Dry, man. The good and faithful. But getting into the card itself, we have another native here, Piper Niven, challenging Bailey for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Yeah, I almost got confused for a split second, but the Women's World Heavyweight Championship is on Raw. That's what Rhea Ripley had. In this one, I think the build has been okay, right? It would have been a little bit better, and it would have been different had Piper Niven been taken a little bit more seriously and had a little bit more focus put on her, or even them as a tag team, her and Chelsea Green, before she was gearing towards Bailey. And again, that's gonna come with time, right? But I think, yes, you, like I was just mentioning, you have your stories and your focus for the championships, but it's crucial to have your follow-up, right? And your up next and your at bat brewing. And it's very simple, right? Like, I take that back. It's not very simple to come up with stories, right? But it's very simple to kind of come together and brainstorm, right? Like, that's the whole point. So I think having a championship as the main focus obviously is easy enough, and it is what it is, and that's what everyone's end game should be. But there should be a good amount of feuds happening without the title being directly involved. So that's kind of like my little soapbox moment there for the day right now. But that, I say that because this would have been a prime example for Piper Niven, right? I think, especially as a singles competitor, because I would love to see them as obviously a tag team, right? Like that's fine, but I think they would be much more beneficial as possibly even Chelsea Green being a manager for Piper Niven and vice versa. We all thought that, obviously Piper would be the heavy and maybe like a Shawn Diesel type vibe or whatever. Um, but I think that I kind of like Piper speaking for herself and really going out there and owning her segment with Bailey. It wasn't like out of the world, or anything like that, but it was good, it was solid, and that's what people need, just time and repetition. I can't imagine being out there and talking on the mic, you know what I mean, in front of millions of people, and thousands of people, like, live in person. So I always, and I think it's easy for us on this side to kind of lose sight of that. But I always try to keep that in mind as well. When I'm sitting here like, oh my god, that sucked, or like, oh, that was okay, but like, or just being judgy. You know what I mean? Like, I try to smack myself sometimes and be like, yo, like, what would you be doing out there? What would you be saying out there? You know what I mean? And it probably wouldn't be good. But with that being said, I think that with, obviously, yes, it would be a nice feel good moment for Piper to win. I don't think this is it. I think that this is one where the champion is going to retain. I think the spotlight is going to be, and it should be, and especially on SmackDown, on Bailey and Nia Jax going forward into SummerSlam, right? Like, we already kind of have that figured out. And that, for that matter, we have the heavyweight championship match figured out as well. I'm pretty certain it's for the heavyweight championship. I'll double check my notes. But the winners of the King of the Ring tournaments, right, and Queen of the Ring tournaments, respectfully, they will be facing the champion at SummerSlam. So that be, think that you necessarily would want to change the title and put it on Piper just to have her face off against Nia. Um, I mean, yeah, you can. I guess some things would be obvious, but it's like you don't need to go to that type of match, like the irresistible force, immovable object type bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we get it. But I think Bailey and Nia Jax will can have like a good story, and I think they could have a good few couple promo exchanges back and forth. So I'm looking forward to that. But again, bringing it back to this match in particular, again, just to solidify, my prediction is that Bailey is retaining the championship, probably after a good 10, 13, 14-minute match, not including the entrances. Yeah, I was thinking about the timing, but I think that's a good amount of time. But next up, we have the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship triple threat match as well. We have Blanca. Told you guys, it's been a long day. Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill, your women's tag team champions, facing off against Candice LeRae. I'm sorry, not Candice LeRae. That was in the picture and the article here that I have pulled up. um, Long day. Isla Dawn and Alba Fire, and they're facing off obviously as well against, because it's being triple threat, 3 teams. Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark, which I love the team and the idea and the concept behind Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler as a team, right? I think that they need to stick with that. I think they need to go with that long term and not fray or not be discouraged that maybe the fans are cheering for them right away or anything like that. And again, shout out, well, not again, but in quick side note, shout out to Shayna Baszler for her performance at NXT Battleground on Saturday or no Sunday. Oh my god, I'm blanking on her Lola Vice, I think it was. They had a really good match. It was a today maybe I should have done the show at a different time. I'm sorry guys, I'm blanking on the match that they had. But it was the Underground, NXT Underground. The style and the concept that Shane McMahon had back in the day with Raw Underground was pretty much that in NXT. It looked pretty cool. So shout out to them. It was a pretty good match. I don't want to say surprised, but I just I wasn't expecting that necessarily. So for the grand scheme of things, I thought it was pretty decent. And it was a pretty good card. I think the crowd there was a little bit of a downer at some points, and unfairly so at the NXT PLE. But yeah, other than that, I think it was a pretty good show. So if you have some free time, check that out. But getting back to the match here and the prediction, I'm not even gonna spend much time on it. Like I said, I'm liking Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler as a team, but there's no way Jade Cargill and Bianca are losing here. So that's an easy pick there. And the champions will be retaining again. Next up, we have the Intercontinental Championship. Sami Zayn facing off against Chad Gable. Chad Gable is another one that has been on the bubble lately regarding his contract status. Of course, we all know what's going on with Ricochet and how he was written out, essentially, with the beatdown that he got this past Monday. But and I think for the record, I think that was very well done. I love the Samantha Irving touch as well. That was very cool. But yeah, back to the card here. I think this match isn't really as hard to determine either. And I think or predict. I think this would kind of go either way either, or regardless rather, if Chad was staying or leaving. Now, obviously depending on if Chad is leaving, they most likely wouldn't be putting it on him, but if he renewed, right? I guess what I'm saying is I don't think that just because if he renewed or signed a new contract that guarantees that he would be the champion. I do think though that Chad Gable will be re-signing if I had to make another prediction on that. Unlike our guy Ricochet, which again, like I mentioned, very, very cool. And I like what they did on Monday. Again, like I just mentioned regarding this Samantha Irving part. I just like that they gave him time and they actually did something and that he didn't just disappear and vanish. But with that being said, again, I'm thinking if I had to put money on it, most likely Gable would resign. Although I could see him making a real impact, no pun intended, on the independent scene. But two predictions in one. I think Chad Gable will be re-signing with WWE, but I think Sami Zayn will be retaining. I think the story here is with Sami retaining and having Chad pretty much explore this new role and this new version of himself. If they want to switch up the titles here or have a little bit of I guess like maybe like a surprise win, a shock win, they could put the title on Chad, but I don't see it happening there. I think if it's gonna happen, it's gonna be in a different setting. So I think Sammy's gonna retain and maybe not move on, but retain, and then maybe the next part of the chapter will unfold starting next week. But next up we have WWE Undisputed Championship. Of course, your champion is Cody Rhodes facing off against AJ Styles in an I Quit match. We got a salmon suit moment, but of course it was light baby blue with AJ Styles. It's like a pastel blue, like a baby blue, like a sky blue. I guess I shouldn't say sky blue now that there's a wrestler named Sky Blue. But yeah, I think that segment was very well done too. They got very emotional. My guy Cody, no surprise there. But I think AJ did no pun intended, a phenomenal job as well. And they really added a nice new layer onto this match and a reason for this match going into Clash of the Castle. So and I love the I Quit little caveat added onto it as well. And I think it's interesting because of no surprise here. My prediction is that if first of all, Cody Rhodes is never gonna say he quits, right? Maybe if he ever becomes a bad guy, that could happen then. But as a good guy, Cody's never gonna say he quits, right? Unless it's to like protect or save Brandy or something crazy. Um, wouldn't that be something if that's what happened on Saturday? But I could definitely see Styles quitting, right? Like he was kind of leaning in that direction and kind of playing that up, right? So it wouldn't be too out of pocket and too like, wait, what? Where did this come from? Type of thing. I don't see him quitting for real, right? That'd be kind of crazy. Maybe he's taking some time off and just taking a little bit of a reduced schedule. But I have a feeling my guy's making way too much money and having a good time to hang up the boots right now. Unless he is, unless he made a commitment to himself, to his wife, to his family that, hey, I'm gonna stop, then that's cool and that's his business and props and thank you to him. But I don't think that's his time, right? I think it would have been hyped up more, and I think it would have been a more emotional build and not just a one night thing in that regard. So again, solidifying my pick again is Cody Rhodes retaining. I'm curious to see if we get a third match, but I don't see why we would, since Cody is gonna win all three again. And to me, excuse me, I don't think you want that. I don't think you want to kind of set that narrative where, okay, like Cody always is getting the upper end now, like, right? If you think about it, he beat Seth, what was it, all three times? If not all three, the majority. He beat Brock Lesnar the majority of the time, and then now he's gonna sweep AJ, right? So I don't think you wanna I don't think you wanna even get into that area with having a third. And I don't think you need to. I think again, now that we're going into the SummerSlam time frame, I think that Cody's next world challenger needs to present itself, and the build needs to begin. And I think it would be, I mean, I guess maybe since you're still like your big SummerSlam isn't until 2026, like you could possibly try to get away with a third match of Cody and AJ Styles at SummerSlam. But I think that's kind of shitty. I feel like the people who are going to pay a lot of money to go to that show, they deserve a fresh match in that regard. So, yeah, obviously again, Cody is retaining. But that leads us to the main event and the probable main event here. I was just thinking, I would be kind of surprised if they put Cody on lats, but with it being an I Quit match, they could end up anywhere in the arena, so maybe they would. But I don't know. I could see them doing that long match and then coming back and then having like a commercial break for us who have like a whatever type of Peacock package or a break, regardless. You know what I mean? But with this match in particular, I don't know. I don't know what to do with the CM Punk of it all. And I think that's the funnest part. To me, I would fucking love a bad guy CM Punk, right? But I don't think that's gonna happen right now. And yes, you can get away with, oh, Punk just screwed Drew in Scotland, you know what I mean? But so he's a bad guy there. He's hated there, kind of like Brett, you know what I mean? But in America and everywhere else in the world, he's loved. So I think you can get away with that. I think Punk is just the type of guy to make sure that he's hated where he needs to be hated and loved where he needs to be loved. Just like he did with MJF in AEW, right? When he went to New York, like he was hated in New York, but he was loved everywhere else. So and Punk popped up in NXT, right? He's obviously, I think he's damn near close to a comeback, right? If not within the next month or two. So you could have him do something at the paper PLE, and possibly cost and screw Drew. Uh, to me though, both options just kind of seem predictable, and regardless of which way you go, right? And I don't know what the better, to me it just really really banks on what they want out of CM Punk long term. And by long term I mean 6 months to a year from now, between now to next year's WrestleMania, right? I think you could very easily, like I was saying, have Punk screw Drew in Scotland, have Priest retain, and then have Punk still be a good guy because everywhere else in the world hates Drew still, and Drew's gonna come out there and bitch and be even more heated and have that fiery, like badass, like he's even more pissed off, right? Has even more reasons to complain, bitch and moan. And it would be justified, but it still doesn't change the fact that he doesn't need to be a dick about it, which he's absolutely will be. So obviously that's the one hand. And on the other route, you can go with Drew winning. And I don't think it's a terrible idea. I think, to me, if I was probably betting, I would think the more popular choice is that Punk is gonna screw Drew. But I really think too that since he didn't win at the first Clash at the Castle, I really think that they're gonna want to have a feel good moment for him. I really think that they're gonna want Drew to have his moment. Yes, he had a brief moment at WrestleMania this past year, but it was for 5 minutes and 46 seconds, right? So the fact that technically he had a moment, but it was only a 5-minute moment and 46-second moment, I I don't see them kind of doing that to him then, and then having him come back to pretty much have another round at the championship, and it's the championship, right? On Raw at least, and have him lose again in his hometown, or home country. So that's why I'm just like, it makes sense to me having Punk come out, and I'd be here for it. And screw Drew and do everything I just said. But I don't, and I would fucking love to see it, right? Like, I would love to see the riot. I would love to see the hate, the fans just losing their minds, screaming at Punk. So maybe they will do it just for shits and giggles in that regard. But I feel like, I feel like, I can't remember who said it, but someone used to always say WWE is a babyface company. And yes, the head guy is no longer there, but I feel like that's still kind of them at their core. And I just feel like you kind of have as much going with Drew being champion and Drew beating Damian as you do with Punk screwing Drew. And as I'm saying that, like, it's almost shitty too, because like Damian Priest is just kind of like getting the shit end of the stick of this all, and just kind of being overlooked in a way, and just like, oh yeah, he's not really a factor. It's just what's gonna happen to Drew at Drew with Punk. You know what I mean? So that's another reason why. And I, for one, too, like, that's why I was kind of referencing earlier. I'm good with Damian as champion. I like what he's been doing. I like the fact that he's getting time to grow. I'm kind of concerned, if he does lose the championship now, when he would get it back. Because obviously, if Punk is going to have any type of involvement or anything, he's going to be getting involved, and that means he's most likely close to returning. And then the focus is going to be on Punk, Drew, and maybe Damian would be included, but I don't see him beating a CM Punk right now or regaining the championship anytime soon. And I really like him as a champion right now. Like, I'm happy with them pulling the trigger with him at WrestleMania 40. And yes, like, he has had a good showing, so you can make a case for that, but I just feel like you can get more out of it. I think um you could really drag that part out a little bit more, but as much as I hate to say it, and then because you think about it too, I'm sorry guys if you're not watching the YouTube, I'm just deep in thought. I just When you think about the SummerSlam, right? So if Damian Priest wins, it's gonna be Damian versus Gunther at SummerSlam. If Drew wins, it's gonna be Drew versus Gunther. What match would you want at SummerSlam? I think you would want Gunther and Drew. Yes, we've seen it before, but it would be different circumstances. So, as much as I hate to say it, because again, I'm digging Damian Priest and I give him so much credit. I'm gonna go with Drew McIntyre wins in his home country. He celebrates and he finally has his moment. His true moment, and he gets to hold on to it and keep it for longer than 5 minutes, and he gets to go home with it. I hope his wife gets to go there. I hope his family gets to go. I mean, obviously, if they're in his home country, I would think his family would. I obviously have no fucking idea where in proximity they are, but I would hope that he would be able to get them out there. But yeah, man, I'm gonna go Drew. I'm gonna go Drew in I think regardless of if Punk gets involved or not, I think Drew still finds a way to come out on top, and I'm gonna be happy for Drew. Regardless too, I think that may be the word of the night too. Regardless, if Damian Priest does retain, I'm stoked for that, and I would love to see that match going forward. But that's why I said earlier too, you have to have a strong Cody match if you're gonna have Damian Priest versus Gunther. All due respect, just name value wise, right? Like, I think that, and that leads me to kind of think too that something big is possibly coming with Cody at the SummerSlam. So kind of TBD on that that side of the card. But I think at least on the Raw side, I think you're gonna have Drew McIntyre winning the championship and then defending at SummerSlam against Gunther. But with that being said, guys, I am going to wrap up here and grab something to eat and hit the bed. I appreciate you guys so much for checking out the show, liking, subscribing, viewing, doing all that good stuff that you do, and commenting and just engaging with it and chatting with me. I appreciate you guys. Stay safe out there and enjoy some wrestling, guys. Until next time.